were 100 years before that, and then they yielded to the Greeks. Now, let's wrap up our study of the Greeks. Then we're going to learn 3 terms, and that pretty much will take us until 10 till. But let's wrap up our study of the Greeks. So Alexander the Great died in 323, and when he died, his kingdom was divided among 4 generals. Nobody was strong enough to succeed him. Here are the 4 generals' names, and here are their territories. The first name would be Ptolemy, Ptolemy. And oh, we're going to have so much fun studying the Ptolemies. I'll give you a hint. Cleopatra was the last of the Ptolemies. Cleopatra. She looked a lot like Elizabeth Taylor, I'm told. She died in 30 BC, but the Ptolemies, now the Ptolemies, they took over Egypt. So when you think of the Ptolemies, think of Egypt. Next general's name was Seleucus, 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 Seleucus. And the Seleucids, think of Syria. Now, not Syria. They're long gone by now. Nineveh's been destroyed as of 612 BC. But these would be the Syrians. Ptolemy's empire, the Ptolemaic Empire, was centered in Alexandria, Egypt. The Seleucids, centered in Syria, had Antioch as their capital. Virtually all of the Ptolemies, those rulers were named Ptolemy. Ptolemy 1, 2, etc. But the Seleucids had 2 names. Some were named Seleucus, and a lot of them were named Antiochus. The third term, well, let me finish these generals. Now, these 2 empires, the Ptolemaic Empire, Egypt, and the Seleucid Empire, Syria, those are the 2 big ones. Those are the ones we want to pay attention to. The other 2 we're not even going to mention, except to mention the names of the generals of the territory, and they just fade from history. They have nothing to do with the Jews, or very, very little, so we're not even going to look at them. But the third general is Lysimachus. And Lysimachus, again, I don't even have him on the PowerPoint. Lysimachus gets Thrace and Bithynia. Thrace and Bithynia. Now the last guy has a biblical link. The last general is Cassander. And Cassander married one of Alexander the Great's half-sisters. I don't know which half, right or left. I don't know.
The top half.
You may know her name because it's in the Bible. Did you know there's a city in the Bible that was called Thermae. I'll bet you can guess why they named it Thermae with an A sound here. Hot springs. Well, when Alexander's half-sister, and I'll give you her name in a minute, married Cassander, Alexander's general. By the way, he inherited Macedon. Cassander gave his new wife, a wedding present. He gave her the city of Thermae, and he renamed it in honor of her. Her name was Thessalonice, which means victory on the sea, and he gave her the city of Thessalonica. So just a little interesting thing in history there. When you read about the Thessalonian correspondence, which is incredible. Remember that Alexander the Great's general Cassander renamed that city and called it after the name of his wife. Now, with Egypt, Syria, Macedon, Thrace, and Bithynia, all under Greek influence, Hellenism really has a foothold in the Mediterranean world. Now let me give you just a couple of things here. Hellenism had an emphasis, we've talked about this before, not this, but Hellenism had an emphasis on beauty and shape and movement. And the Jewish religion, the Jewish religious practices were aesthetically unappealing, and so worship was influenced by beauty, shape, and movement, and it became more external than internal. Aren't you glad you live in a time when our worship, we don't worry so much about beauty and movement and shape, the externals, but our worship is, no, wait a minute, you see I'm being sarcastic. See? So here, look, here's Balaam. We remember Balaam, this false prophet. And Balak hires Balaam to curse the Jews. Numbers chapter 18, 19, 20, especially 22. So instead of cursing the Jews, what happens to Balaam as he begins to speak? He blesses the Jews. Well, Balak is incensed. What incense? What? I paid you. Balaam says, I just have to speak what comes out of my mouth. And you know, Balaam was even warned by his donkey, don't go. By the way, I was in a debate once and somebody asked me a question. I was in a debate with this guy and he said, do you really believe that God spoke through a donkey? And I said, you know, the thing is that you just consider the existence of the donkey. How many of those have we ever made with all of our technology put together? Think about the intricacy of a donkey or any living thing. So you're missing the larger point. And to answer your question, the Bible says it happened. I believe that it happened. And I said he can speak through you, so I guess he can speak through it. Probably shouldn't have said that. If you can talk, he can. Now, let's move along here. Myself in trouble.
It actually says open the mouth of the donkey.
Now, but here's how
himself
Balaam
doing the
did
thinking, that's
seduce the
just
Jewish men. Do you remember what Balaam did later on? And by the way, Balaam died in the war a little later on, but what did Balaam tell the Jewish men? Well, you need to go here and worship these pagan women. That was the end of that. So here are the Jews, and our God is a God of order and beauty, yes, and restraint and holiness. And so the Hellenistic model for worship, well, they had an emphasis on beauty, shape, and movement, all these externals. And so the Jews were seduced by Hellenism, and it was just being this philosophy was everywhere, because after Alexander died, the kingdom's divided up, and his goal of pushing this model, the Hellenistic model, was realized. All right, so Alexander dies, and his generals take over. Now, having said that, let's do one more additional thing, and then we want to get into our study of the Ptolemies and the Seleucids. And then we have this funny word, the Hasmoneans. If you will make a note that the Hasmoneans were kind of a tribe of Jews, a house of Jews, and they had a nickname. And I've given you the nickname several hours ago. The nickname was Hammer, and that's the word Maccabees. The Hasmoneans and the Maccabeans are the same. Maccabee is a kind of a nickname. Now, before we leave the Greeks, let me make sure we've got a couple of key events, dates in our minds, and then we'll leave the Greeks. I think we've done this. Yep, we did. Never mind. Let's go to the Ptolemies. I had some dates down there and some events, but we went through. I'll just talk about the Ptolemies. Ptolemy the First. If you'll make a note, Ptolemy the First. We'll go about half an hour on the Ptolemies. I think we can finish. I know we can finish the Ptolemies before our evening is up, and we'll start tomorrow with the Seleucids. But let's focus on the Ptolemies. Ptolemy the First. The Jews, after Alexander died, had been under the rule of the Seleucids, but only for a short time. We come to this guy, Ptolemy the First. And if you'll write down, Ptolemy the First was cruel to the Jews. At first. The Jews, remember, after Babylonian captivity, they didn't have much prominence, and they were just kind of batted around hither and yon. He was a very cool man. Let me bring up our next PowerPoint here. I think I've got it. Yeah, turn this thing the right way. There we go. We've looked at that.